Look at you, magnificent human you. Do you know what greatness you're capable of just by being human? Just by being born? Just by being part of the human race? You're so powerful. You're so magnificent. Did you know that we're all natural born scientists? There's studies that show that children, that naturally the way they learn is through experimentation. And that's at its foundation what it means to be a scientist. It's really through experimentation, documenting that experimentation and learning from it. In addition, we're actually all natural born creatives. Curiosity is the foundation of creativity, and children are the most curious and creative entities you can think of. That process of experimentation is heavily found in being creative and developing that creative ability. So the question is, why aren't we all like this? Why isn't it that we are all tapping into that creative ability, that we're not all successful entrepreneurs making our way in the world, marketing ourselves and all that jazz? Well, it ends up that, unfortunately, for a long time, we've been manipulated. There's been kept like a working class and a non-working class, and basically the elite has, as you hear, oh, there's the elite. It's because they didn't know any better. Because they thought that it would be easier to keep people divided, and that way there would be, like, they could vote, but really we would be controlling what they thought and how they voted. Like Winston Churchill has a very famous quote about democracy, and I guess I can understand. I mean, maybe I guess it makes sense. Like, how do you solve that problem? How do you solve giving everybody the customized learning experience that they need? But we have that technology today. We can do that now. Now, to speak more to the manipulation, when did it start? It started a long time ago. We had the Civil War, and then after the Civil War, we were kind of divided, and it's kind of been like that since. We've been fighting each other since, and it's been kind of a battle, Democrats versus Republicans. And believe it or not, those two things are actually reversed. The Democrats started in the Confederacy, and after the Confederacy, the Democrats started from there. The Republicans were in the North, and so you can see how. And the Republicans wanted a representative of big government. Democrats wanted small government, citizens voting and deciding for themselves what would happen. And it's kind of flipped, which just goes to show how manipulated we really have become, how detached from the knowledge of how our country really functions we've become. And Roger Stone is a great example of how that manipulation happened kind of more in modern times. But if you look before that, Edward Bernays, the godfather of modern PR, manufacturing the need in other people, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. If you watch the documentary Ethos, it's a great example showcasing, what that was all about. And yeah, it's a little bit skewed. They're talking about how it was used to manipulate the masses and keep us, locked into consumerism so that we wouldn't focus on leading. We could be easily manipulated. But I get on tangents a lot. I'm going to try to keep this tight. There'll probably be clips. I'll probably clip things. Roger Stone, there's a documentary called Get Me Roger Stone. When he was 19, he started his experience in politics with the Nixon administration. He had a jar full of coins. He was given a jar full of coins, and he went to the opponent of Nixon and asked for a receipt for the Young Socialist Association. And he got the receipt, and they used that receipt as a means to smear Nixon's opponent. And so Nixon, made it into presidency, and then the Watergate situation happened. And because Roger Stone was somehow involved with that whole coin situation, somehow he ended up being seen as a heavy hitter in the Watergate scenario. And while that might terrify most people, he saw that as an opportunity. And so he kept going in the political sphere, realized the importance of misinformation and really feeding on people's fear and pressing for division. And he really emphasized and grew PACs, which are political action committees. And basically, these political action committees are able to collect funds, private funds, so that they could then use those private funds to invest directly in different campaigns. So that they could that's how private money has really gotten into the whole political sphere, and how it's really altered the way we conduct business. And see, business. It's really altered the way that our government functions. and how it's not really run by the citizens, but run by big money. PACs and super PACs are a huge aspect of that. And so he ran the Ronald Reagan campaign, and guess what? It's called Make America Great Again. That's how ridiculously lazy, I guess, he kind of is in that sense, because he literally just was like, yes, this is how we're going to get Trump into presidency. It's not a stretch to understand that he met Trump in the 1980s, 1988, and he liked Trump, and he thought Trump would be a great presidential candidate. So I guess he just was like, let's make America great again. We're going to use the same platform. And there's videos of him chanting, lock her up, lock her up. Roger Stone even connected to Alex Jones, who had this little piece about how the water is making the frogs gay. But actually there was this study that showed that there's, I guess, high levels of estrogen in the water causing frogs to become hermaphrodites. Not exactly the same thing, but that's what I mean. There's so much misinformation out there, and it's used to control us, but it doesn't have to. Like, we don't have to let it. Social media has been an even easier way to manipulate people because it was designed to control your behavior. Another great documentary, The Social Dilemma, will help you understand in more depth how this was designed by people who understood how to manipulate your behavior, how to get you to want to go back on the screen. And then they'd collect more and more data about you to figure out what influences you, what gets you to be back on there, and they'd sell that to advertisers. And that's exactly how media works. They sell to advertisers, so they're obviously, a lot of media outlets are also spreading fear and distrust and separation, but Facebook just did it way better because it had AI and algorithms. So an example of that's in Myanmar. Facebook was how most of the citizens access their news, and the military was able to convince the citizens to fight each other, to actually kill one another, to kill Muslims and go after them. And the sad thing is, that's seen as like how an authoritative government kind of misused a platform that's meant for good, but really it happened here. It happened in the U.S. A 17-year-old went down into another state with his assault rifle, and he killed some people because of the riots going on and because of the narrative that was being portrayed of these rioters being these terrible citizens. And then the mayor that had an attempted kidnapping. And then the guy who had $500,000 worth of money and a bunch of weapons trying to kill Joe Biden. And the biggest problem here is that Trump, the guy who's got the highest level of our government, of our position in our government, the highest level, he's not advocating for people to come together. And I have a letter from him that says we can do this as one people, one nation, together, one nation, one people. But he's not advocating for that. He's not advocating for us to come together. He keeps talking about the terrible Democrats and demonizing people rather than saying we need to come together, people. Folks, we need to come together. We need to unite. We need to look at ourselves as not as Republicans, not as Democrats, but as Americans. And that's really the message I want you to take away from this, is that we need to change the way we do things. We need an administration that cares about us coming together as a people. I don't think, yeah, we can vote Biden in, but we really need to reform the way things work. And as I was saying about Roger Stone, he actually got sentenced to prison, 40-month sentence that got commuted by Donald Trump. And his sentence, he was going to jail because of his undermining the investigation into Trump about the whole Russia situation. He basically protected Trump from getting impeached. And then Roger Stone has also said that if he loses, he should incite martial law and basically take control of the country. Now, whether or not Donald Trump actually wants to be an authoritative, wants to be a dictator, wants to run the country, wants to just be the leader like Kim Jong-un and Putin, I can't say for certain, but it doesn't look good, because the fact that he's not talking about us unifying, the fact that he keeps pushing conspiracy theories like QAnon, who really is pushing people to do terrible things. Because again, we know that we're not being told the whole truth, and instead of being given the tool sets to do research properly, we're getting stuck in these bubbles on social media. They create these bubbles because you can unfollow people you don't agree with. And each person is getting fed their own newsfeed that is getting them further and further and further apart from each other, and blaming it on each other, blaming it on the other group. The Republicans blaming the Democrats, Democrats blaming the Republicans. When, as I stated, like the Republicans and Democrats weren't even on the same political sides as they are now when they first started after the Civil War. So the thing is that there's solutions to this. There's solutions. Like I said, being human is amazing. We have such masterful capacities as a human. So to start, what you need to do is learn how to research properly. And also, don't unfollow the people you don't agree with. Talk to them. Communicate with them. Show, if they see an article that skews their view in a certain way, show them an article that opens up their mind to another possibility, and actually have a dialogue with them as a human, because they're not racist, they're just being manipulated. And we can solve this. We can solve these problems by helping people have a sense of community, have a sense of power as a person, not having to rely on believing that other races are less than them so that they can feel powerful, or believing that they need to go kill people to be more powerful, or joining a hate group, joining a terrorist group, joining a gang. We can solve these things by providing people with actual compassion, giving them access to the tools they need to become better versions of themselves. Now you can start right now. Like I said, talk to people. Don't unfollow people. Stay in their lane. Stay with them. That's the only way you can help them. And then the people that are pushing the buttons that are keeping us manipulated, again, they're just doing it because they don't know any better way. They believe this is the way that's going to help us, that this is how we've always done it, this is how we're going to continue to do it. But we don't have to continue doing that. If we teach people how to do proper research, get the book, The Craft of Research. It'll teach you how to conduct proper research. And how you can start right now is when you search information, don't just search information that supports your current viewpoint, search information that's also against it. And then try to look for biases, little hints that it's trying to sway you in a certain way, try to convince you of something. For example, if you see two articles, one calls coronavirus the China virus and the Wuhan virus, they're trying to bias you towards being hateful towards China. And then the other article calling it the coronavirus, obviously that's the accurate statement. So you look at that. That's one way. Another way is to look down, find out who funded the study. Was it a nonprofit? Who connected to the nonprofit? Who funded that nonprofit? Was it fossil fuel companies? And then if you can't figure that out, just think critically about who has to gain from us all believing this to be true. Is it a fossil fuel company? Is it a pharmaceutical company? Like, who has to gain financially from us believing this to be true, and us believing that we need to move that forward, right? In whatever way. And then you can, figure it out on your own. That's what you can do now. But what we really need to do moving forward is we need to create an online education system that teaches people how to be happy. There's this book called Happier. It's a fantastic book that'll teach you how to actually be happier. There's exercise in it, and it really works. There's Think Fast, Think Slow. It teaches you about mental biases, such as confirmation bias, which is exactly what goes on in social media. So that's helpful. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss will teach you how these marketing tools are used and how you can use it for yourself and not fall into the trap of them. And then, teach people the skill sets that they need to develop based off their passions so they can get access to the digital economy, how to market themselves, how to create videos, how to edit. There's so many opportunities for learning and growing that we can do. And then how are we going to get people to do that? We need to have a universal basic income that's tied to that. So there's $160 trillion in privately held wealth across the world. Half of that's $80 trillion. $80 trillion divided by 7 billion is $2,000 a month for a year per person. So we have the tools. We could create this universal basic income, and there's definitely software that could track whether or not these people are actually studying, actually growing. And then once people get that extrinsic value of studying, of growing and learning, as they start to develop that intrinsic value, the value you get from when you start to learn more about something, when the world starts to make more sense, and you start to understand things on a better fundamental level, that's dopamine. You get internal reward system for that firing off. So let's do this. Let's come together. Let's solve the world's problems, because we have this opportunity to create change that will fundamentally shift our society now and into the future in a way that we can't even imagine all the different benefits it's going to have. I have a lot more things to say about this, but I'm trying to keep this as succinct as I can, and I'm probably a little bit longer than I wanted this video to be. But I want you to look at the hope. I know it's dark. I know we're going through some terrible things, but this is because of the way things were. Just because that's how it was doesn't mean it's how it has to be moving forward. We can change this. We can do it together. We just have to make that choice, that conscious choice. And those in power, you have to understand that the world will be a better place. Your life will actually be better if you empower the people around you. I know it's hard to believe because it's not how you were raised, it's not how you've been doing things. But I promise you, and I will have more videos that show you that we can do this, that your lives will be better, will be more magnificent. The cures that will exist, the innovations, the cultural creations are far beyond anything you can imagine right now. And believe me, it's something that you want to experience. You just don't know it yet. And children are the most that process of experimentation is as heavily is how this was designed by people who understood how to manipulate. This was designed by people. And that brings us back to Roger Stone in a sense, because Roger Stone, all right, so these citizens, right, getting attacked, indicted for Roger Stone got he was, so what I'm saying here is that there's the tipping point. Sorry. We have this capacity to make a change that will fundamentally shift our society moving forward for the greater, that will fundamentally, I'll promise you, and I will have more videos to shoot. I will have more videos